All right. Well, Amanda, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Absolutely. So tell the world a little bit about who is Amanda Lewan.
I am a co founder of Bamboo Detroit. So we build community focused co working spaces. We do space and programming to help support founders here in Michigan.
That's a cool space to be in. You're both a founder and a supporter of founders. How's the journey been as a founder?
It's been fun and surprising and unexpected. I went to school, I always tell people I went to school for creative writing. I never took a single business class. Didn't think of myself as a business person, sort of stumbled into entrepreneurship. At the time, I was freelancing and there was no place to go downtown yet. This was like 2013. And so a group of friends and I started a very early small version of Bamboo. It was just 2,000 square feet. I always tell people we took the lean startup approach. We started really raw. We just had IKEA furniture. We were literally above a Bales Bonds and a block away from Tiger Stadium. So tailgating happened right out our door all the time. Um, but being a creative person, I think entrepreneurship itself is probably one of the most creative things you can do. You have a vision, you take an idea, and you turn it into something that lives beyond you. And I thought that was fascinating and sort of threw myself into it and have been on this journey now 6 or 7 years.
And it's called Bamboo, which I always thought was really a cool name when I first heard it, and I didn't know who you were at the time, but I don't know why it just stuck in my brain. What's the history of Bamboo?
Yeah, so one of our former co founders, Dave Anderson, when he was at school, he read the definition of bamboo and that it's one of the fastest growing plants, but it takes a few years to sprout from a seed. And he thought, what a great symbol for startups and innovation. And that sort of stuck with him. And so when we started Bamboo, we wanted to be a place where people could go to start businesses and think creatively and innovatively. And so it felt like a good metaphor. And since then, we've really grown into it. We provide flexible offices. Bamboo is a very flexible material. But overall, we really think of our space and our services helping others grow. And then it's interesting. I think a lot of people like the name because when you're in Detroit, you don't think of like gardens or plants. You know, it's like we're a very industrial, Midwestern kind of vibe. So it's unique and it kind of stands out.
Yeah, what a really cool metaphor for your business, but also for life right now, and for this time of pandemic that we find ourselves in. How have you all been flexible through this challenging time?
Yeah, I would say the way I think about it now is we had our initial pivot, right? Just like everybody else, going virtual, having to close our facilities for a little bit. And then you have the more intentional pivot for us, which has been really looking at how we can be even more flexible for our members now more than ever. People come in once a week, they come in kind of when they need the office, but refocusing to our roots on building our community has been a big focus for us right now. So we've been doing a ton of great virtual events, trying to connect people one on one, just check in. We pack our weekly newsletters for our members full of grants and opportunities, but we kind of went into this like crisis support mode where, we knew that people needed more than space to get through this, and we went tried to go above and beyond to provide those resources and those connections.
I love it. I love it. So reacting and responding to the crisis versus just reacting and shutting down, which is tough to do. You know, it's really tough to get in that mind space. One of the things that we like to say is, as leaders, you have to lead others, you have to help others, but you also have to lead yourself. And I'm curious, how have you been able to find the time for yourself and all of this and to make sure that you're in the right space?
Um, well, I don't think it's easy at all. I kind of feel like we had this first difficult time in the spring, and then we got reopened and things started to slowly flow in. But now, as we head into the fall, winter, just realizing that you can't plan very well for what's ahead, and you have to be really even more flexible. Like we're not going back to a normal in a previous, and that's still. I know it sounds crazy, but like 6 months in, I don't know. I think reopening and getting people back into our spaces safely and having new processes in place and new designs, I still kind of felt like we were going to go back to that, way it was before. And it's really hard to shed that. So that's something that me as a leader that I'm working on. And then in terms of making sure that, I guess, kind of feel like you were talking about wellness and self care. I try to meditate a little bit, but sometimes meditation for me is stilling my mind for 10, 15 minutes at the beginning of the day or journaling and writing in the morning. Usually, I find that sets my tone better for the rest of the day. And then sometimes just not doing anything, which is really hard for CEOs and founders of companies because you're constantly on 24/7. But sometimes you just got to take a day off, whether it's an actual weekend day where you don't check email or, you force yourself to disconnect. And that I think helps refresh you and refresh your team and be more present for other people.
Yeah, and imagine with your creative writing background that's one of the tools that you actually probably learned over the years, that you need that space, you need that white space in order to be creative, in order to tap into the more emotional mind as a leader. What's been your experience?
I would say with that, fiction is a little bit easier than reality right now. So I've been actually super productive writing some fiction and short stories. And I think we see that now, like Netflix and all of the consumption of content when people are home more, kind of helps people re-inspire and, deal with things. But for anyone listening, if you're interested in writing, I always recommend The Artist Way. Maybe this can be my one book recommendation that you had asked. So The Artist Way helps you sort of unlock any creative thinking, especially if you're feeling stuck. And it's really simple exercising of your mind and your writing. So one thing she recommends, the author, is to do morning pages. And I did those for years. I don't do them right now because I have so many fiction things going on, but it's the thought that you wake up and you just journal, stream of consciousness, what comes to mind for the first 2 to 3 pages before you do anything else. If you have kids, if you have other responsibilities, just finding that gap in your morning before you get into work to stream of conscious, write it out. And it's almost like a form of therapy. And once you do it regularly, it starts to become a tool to generate ideas. And you sort of see more creativity kind of come top of mind. And so I actually did that for years, and I found it really, really, really helpful. So just a small tip for anyone, if you're thinking, I want to write or journal, or that might be a form that could help you right now. And I know actually other founders and CEOs, like one of my mentors, Doug Song from Duo Security, he started a tech company here in our region. He actually has a book of all the decisions they would write up like every week, a short reflection, the leadership team, and then every quarter, and they could kind of see, they almost have like a book of how they built their business. And he used that as a tool to get his leadership team to sort of step back and reflect on why are we making these decisions and what was our mindset at that time. And so I think of it as just a really good tool for self-reflection.
I love it. I love it. I love it. You're clearly a writer because you said, yeah, you just write like 2 or 3 pages.
Well, and if you've never done it before, you could be writing, your thoughts for the day or like what happened yesterday, and it can be menial like that, and it just gets you going, and it unlocks other things.
Yeah, yeah. Which is a huge challenge, I think, right now because people are so sucked into the sort of the challenge of the day or the firefighting of the day. It's hard to give yourself that space to think creatively.
Yeah.
What are thoughts do you have? What other tips do you have for leaders out there that are struggling with being creative right now?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, we being in the office space industry, I mean, we're getting hit pretty hard. It's definitely a challenging time. So I try to recenter myself by talking to my customers more. Like they really do. It sounds so cheesy, but they really re-inspire me. We do a pitch night every month, and seeing new companies starting and innovating. And just the last 2 months, we actually had organic investors offering to the founders, and being able to still find ways for us to build community and stay connected to our customers has just been phenomenal, because we're not seeing them every day in our office as much, right? And so however you are serving them has changed. And even as we look at, say, Q1 next year, people are back in an office and there's, a vaccine out or whenever that does happen, I think we're always going to still have virtual events and other different creative ways to stay connected. And that's one positive thing I'm looking forward to taking out of this crazy year that we've all faced. So I'm not sure if that's helpful, but I think as a CEO or a founder, just staying connected helps me stay re-inspired and also kind of removes you from that day-to-day drama of what's ever happening around you that you can't control. I think I was just talking to my husband about this yesterday, who's also a founder and a CEO, and I think one of the most difficult things, and Tom, maybe you see this with a lot of your clients, you have a vision of what you want to create and the impact you want to make, but you also have the reality of where you're stuck day to day, and it's almost this tension that you have to face between your present moment and the future you're trying to create. And that is a really difficult tension, I think, sometimes to navigate because you have to deal with the reality of your day and your difficult time you're facing, but you still have to have hope and inspiration and that vision and kind of hold on to it to keep moving forward. So I don't know. Just try not to lose touch of that.
Yeah, there's so much in what you just said that I'd love to talk about all of it. But the last point I think is especially a good one. And there's actually an author, Peter Senge, who talks about in his book, The Fifth Discipline, and some other works that he has about this whole idea of exactly what you just said, that creative tension gets created when we are firmly rooted in our present moment, what he calls the current reality. And when we also have a fixed vision for where we want to go, that future state, that purpose, vision, I don't care what you call it, but that future state. And when you can get clear about your current reality and your future, it immediately creates a tension. It's like a rubber band being stretched between those two poles. And it forces creativity because the only way you get from your current reality to your future is by making progress. And that tension helps to do all the things that you need to do. It helps you to acknowledge that, yeah, this is where I am, but it doesn't mean this is where we have to stay. And you know exactly where your North Star is that you want to get to.
Yeah, and Tom, as you know, we work with a lot of startups and especially earlier stage companies, although we have corporations and a variety of tenants and members now. But I think that's where startups get stuck because it's hard to have this grand vision and this big picture and then also navigate the day-to-day, and probably a lot of CEOs who are maybe in the operations role too, like I am. I think that's just a challenge you have to work with.
Yeah, because a lot of us, are pretty good at problem solving. I've found a lot of CEOs have kind of come up through the ranks of the organization, and they're really good at problem solving, and which is great. The problem is all you ever see is the next problem. You solve a problem, you get through it, and then the next thing that pops up is the next problem. So you solve that and you get through it and process repeat. And as leaders, we've got to shift from seeing the next problem, but also looking behind us and saying, look at all the progress we've made. We started over here and now we've made progress and we're 2-3 months along, 2-3 years along. And it's that momentum, it's that energy that helps you to continue to muster the courage, continue to muster the energy, to keep going for that future. Because I'm actually a big believer that if you really have a powerful vision, if you really have a powerful future out in front of you, you'll never get there, because what fun would that be, right? It doesn't have that inspirational component to it unless it really is pretty far out there. But we can make a significant dent in the world by making huge progress towards that future state that we see as
And
leaders.
what do you do when the problem's not you per se, or not I don't know if I'm wording this right, but what we're facing right now is something unprecedented, and it's not anything anyone could have predicted. And so as things are slow at the office, it's not necessarily anything we're doing. It's a culture shift, and it's a health crisis, and it's something that's sort of out of our hands. And so as a founder, that's you can't solve the problem, that bigger problem, but you have to solve the problems of how it impacts your business day to day. So it's just an interesting time that we're all living through. And
yeah, you have to be the arbiter of reality. You have to literally say, okay, this is part of reality. I could complain about it, but that's not going to do me any good. I could wish I had done something different in the past, but that's impossible. As leaders, we just have to get it. We just have to accept the current reality so we can make progress towards that future. The other thing that you said in there was, reaching out, touching base with your customers, which is sort of business 101, right? But very few leaders really spend the time doing that, frankly, I've found. And that in doing so, you said an interesting word, which was re-inspire yourself. What do you mean by re-inspire?
I think just seeing how we're making an impact day to day still is really helpful. And kind of this topic of culture that you had asked about prior to the podcast when we were talking, we're very caring. We have a very caring team. We have a very caring culture. And so we care about our customers and we want them to succeed. And sometimes that is going above and beyond to think of them, just to send them recommendations, to reach out to them. I kind of see it. I think that's what happened early on in the pandemic, but you got to do that throughout and always. We're very relationship focused. So if you're going to come get an office, you can get an office anywhere. But if you want to be a part of a community and be connected to people and be connected to resources, and care about one another's success, that's the kind of customers that we typically serve.
Yeah, yeah.
Almost a different mindset of business. It's just very, very relationship focused and not transactional.
Yeah, you're trying to do what's best for the clients you have, the customers you have, the companies you have, not just provide lease space for them, that you actually want to create a relationship with them. And why? Why is that so important to you?
Because their success is ours. And I think it is really re-inspiring to see how all of our customers, we have almost 400 members, and we're a lot of startups, a lot of small businesses, a lot of solopreneurs, some that have had to pivot their companies completely, some that have had to scale back, some that have closed rounds and found opportunities. And so I think that's what's inspiring, is seeing other people move quickly and find opportunity. Kind of keeps me going as well as a leader. And so that's why I like to be connected to them, because it's also super creative. And when you're feeling like you have no creative energy, or you're feeling drained, sometimes being around others that are creative and are on the opposite end, I think kind of fill you back up. That at least that works for me.
Yeah. Well, I can see why it works, and it makes a lot of sense. We talk a lot about leadership, and people often say pretty quickly, well, leadership is about inspiration. To inspire means to put spirit into. And what I hear you saying is that you're able to get spirit, you're able to get that inspiration from your customers and all the really cool things that they're doing. And that's a great way to lead yourself, to re-inspire yourself.
Yeah, and a lot of the things Bamboo provides, we do physical co-working space, right? So people have mailboxes set up for us. They have desks and private offices. But what we would do inside the space when people used to come in is still the same thing we can do virtually. It's connecting them and pairing up another founder with a co-founder, finding their first hire, listing their jobs, and connecting them to their first investor. And that stuff just still feels good and still can happen virtually. So it really becomes like a community and a collective led by our team of helping each other. And that's been, I think, the mantra of this whole thing, at least here in our region, is we're all in it together. And we want all of our businesses to succeed. And it's kind of a big lift, but we all have to help each other.
Well, it's fascinating too, because it makes me think, like, right now, that's a brilliant business model, because I would imagine, unlike a lot of other co-working spaces where it's just transactional, it's just a lease, that, it's easy to just say, you know what, we don't need it anymore, we're done with it. And I would imagine that you've actually been able to retain more of your customers because you have that relationship.
Yeah, and I think you see that in a lot of big box brands that, build the fanciest spaces, but aren't relationship focused or building community. And building community is really hard, and it's really hard to do virtual. It's not the same. It's not the same as being in a room and like feeling that energy and being inspired by the speaker, or bumping into your first hire, or building that relationship early on with a founder. It's definitely tougher to do virtually. People are productive virtually, but the relationship aspect, it changes. I think humans do still need human contact, and so we can't wait till we get back to that day someday. But yeah, so I think all of that sort of that energy and that spirit that you experience in a space, it's hard to recreate online, but we do our best to still keep that sense of community going.
Yeah, yeah, we are human beings. We like to be with others, even the most introverted of us. And I consider myself on that side of the introvert extrovert scale. We still need that. I remember going to the shopping market, grocery store not too long ago, and I was like, wow, there's people here. This is amazing. I just
Yeah,
wanted to
the first
stand
time
there.
that you went back out and you saw other humans, and you were like, oh, this is weird, but good.
I love my wife and I love my children, but it is nice to see other humans. For other leaders out there, for other, in particular, I'd say younger leaders maybe who are looking to jump in, with both feet like you did to the startup world. What are your thoughts? What's your advice for them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, right now, so interestingly, I just talked to a woman who is full time at her corporate job and was thinking about continuing there, getting her MBA, because eventually she wanted to start a company. And instead, she thought, why not start my company now while I'm working full time? And again, everybody has different life situations right now. They have different economic situations in which they cannot navigate those things. But I think you can still test ideas. You can still figure out what it is you want to create. And you talk a lot about being inspired or in spirit. You have to find something that you're really passionate about. And a lot of times it's a problem you want to solve, but it can be a deeper motive. For me, bringing unity and connecting people is my deeper motive of why I feel like I'm here doing work. And co-working space is one just great channel for doing that. For channeling that energy and that purpose. For others, it might be, really changing a specific problem in their industry. And that could really, really, really inspire you. You got to make sure it's something you're really passionate about, because there will be other recessions and other ups and downs, and you have to weather that. And so if it is something you're really passionate about, you're more likely to stick in it and build a strong team. And when I think about culture, other early advice I give people is to define those 2 to 3 key values. For us, it's caring, it's community, sort of playing around with like conscientiousness, like being aware of your surroundings and being diligent, and caring about what's around you. And we see bamboo as being part of a bigger ecosystem. We have that mindset of, we're in downtown, we're opening in Royal Oak and eventually Ann Arbor, but we're active in our communities. We're not just inside our walls only serving the people around us. And that's important to our culture. We think of community beyond just us, and that leads to a bigger impact. So when someone's just starting out or just forming their co-founding team, like I think having those 2 to 3 core values helps you really create a strong foundation of why you exist and what's motivating you, and then helps you hire those first few people, which is always like super important to that culture. Those first 5 to 10 people you hire set a tone for the rest. And if you say you value diversity, and then you want to bake that into the beginning. For us, our team that we started with was very diverse, and then we've been really conscientious to partner and invest and support diverse vendors and partners and sponsors. So there's a lot of things you can do from the beginning that can really set up a specific culture that you want as a company. And so I guess those would be my 2 pieces of advice for an early stage founder or someone just starting something new. Making sure you're really passionate or really inspired and motivated deeply about something. And then thinking through what are those couple core values that set that foundation for you and your team and your co-founder or your first hires, so that you have sort of like a good foundation to start with. And even for us, we try to ensure that our partners, our programming, we want everything to sort of fit our values, because it just creates better relationships, I think, overall.
Yeah, yeah. I love that what I heard in your core values wasn't really about the words. The words are nice. They're nice reminders, but it's really what those words mean to you. That community, for instance, isn't just the word community, which people could interpret differently. But what I heard in what you said is community is much bigger than just the folks at Bamboo. It's really about serving the broader community, and
Yeah.
a little different level of thinking than just, sort of an insular focus of community. And
Yeah,
it's
we see ourselves as being part of a greater ecosystem that helps
yeah,
all of the businesses around us succeed.
yeah. That is a great lesson for all leaders out there. Is don't do it by yourself, and don't hire a consultant to come in and help you wordsmith, a perfect mission statement or create core values. Those become exercises in picking words. And it's not about the words. It's about, what does it mean? What's the meaning behind the words? That's where the real value is, because when you talk about it with your team, then you get on the same page. You have that shared sense of purpose and shared sense of where you're going as an organization. So what else would you say, just to kind of leaders in general? What have you learned that may be helpful for leaders out there?
um, I don't know. I mean, I myself am always learning, so I'm not sure I'm an expert on that for leadership development. But I would just hang in there. I think this is a strange time. The market's shifted, and as long as you are still passionate about what you're doing, I think you'll get through it. And hopefully, you're surrounded with personal support too. Like, I have a great team and a great co-founder, which is very helpful for me. In co-working, our team is smaller, but our community is big, and but I have a good, also solid husband and other folks around me, like other business owners and CEOs, I think really understand those ups and downs, and it helps to lean on that and have other folks in your shoes you can call and talk to. And I'm sure everyone listening to this has already done that before. Like, there's just something special about being able to pick up a phone and for me to call someone like your wife, Jessica, and ask her a quick question about, applying for a PPP loan or hiring, for a specific role. It's certainly not easy for CEOs of startup companies and folks starting a new business, but it's not necessarily a bad time to do this right now. Anytime a market shifts, there's opportunity. And a lot of the programming we did early on, which is all available on I can send it to you, our Coping with COVID series if anyone wants to check it out. But a big theme that we caught on was that there is an opportunity. It's going to be difficult. You may have to shift and adjust and pivot. If you already have, great. But there will be an end in sight, or there will be a new product or a new opportunity that comes to you that you can then lean into. And I think that's really, really, really inspiring to see. For us, some of the founders we interviewed early on in our own content series, they talked about how they started in 2008 and had great success years later. So it's really hard to know what will be born from this, but I think a whole nother round of really cool startups are going to come.
Yeah, it's a great point, Amanda. I think that a lot of times we think, well, now is not a good time, right? It's the world's going through a huge challenge, and maybe I just need to wait. But you're saying the opposite, that a lot of times this huge shifts in the world, shifts in the marketplace, create the perfect opportunity to start new things. And so it could be a perfect time for you if you're on the fence of starting a company. The other thing you said that I love, which is all of what you just said, which is having a learning mindset. That that as leaders, there are no, in my opinion, there are no leadership experts. There are people who are committed to getting better every day and learning how to become better leaders every day. And that's the ultimate journey here. That's the ultimate goal. Is I remember when I was a CEO at age 34, I had a couple hundred employees, and I thought, well, a couple of years, I'll figure this thing out. I'll know what it's like to be a CEO, and then I'll be done. And I'll sort of plateau, and I'll just do that forever. And I realized that was a false target. There was no such thing. That it's you never figure it out completely. You just keep going. You just keep trying. You keep trying to get better.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it's about. All right. Well, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for the time, Amanda, and thanks for your open and candid answers.
Thank you. I hope it was helpful. I at least got that book recommendation in there for you.
Yes, that's perfect. Now, that's one of the downsides of this podcast is I get all these book recommendations, and I'm already about 17 books behind. So
yeah, I can imagine. We have a lot piling up in our house, but haven't gotten to them yet. So
now's the time to read. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thanks again, Amanda. Have an awesome rest of your week.
You too. Bye, Tom.
Bye bye.